Broadcasting from the crypt. Welcome to Velvet Bite Radio.
You've entered Velvet Bite Radio, my friends, where the undead speak and the forgotten bite back. I'm your host, Melissa Dawn Harris, writer, researcher, and devoted wanderer through vampire folklore, history, and film. Each week, we descend into the crypt of culture to uncover the myths, monsters, and meaning behind the vampire's eternal allure. So pour a glass, dim the lights, and let's begin. Well, everybody, welcome to the show. It's a little bright in here for a gothic podcast. This is Velvet Bite Radio, and of course, I am your host, Melissa, and it's pretty much an open Q&A today. I've got some articles to talk about, but whoever wanders in, you can present a topic and maybe we can talk about it, and maybe I'll know, maybe I won't. There's a lot of stuff out there that I just kicked my camera. Ooh, kicked my desk, which wobbled my camera. Oh boy, yeah, it's been a crazy day. You know you're having a good day when you spend your time investigating the CIA and MK Ultra and mind control for your next show. It's been a good day. It's been a great day, but it's a Q&A. But I also want to let you guys know we're going to be talking about the hemolacria kind of disease, the crying disease, the tears of Dracula. Plus, we have a few other interesting articles and videos. We've got a story about the Ojai vampire in California. We've also got a story about a vampire child with padlocked ankles that was unearthed in Poland. And of course, last week, you guys know we talked about energy vampires. And so I've got a little article to talk about on that one. The energy vampire, and we had the wonderful Dee Moonflyer on last week to talk about that. And she had a super spooky story that took place when she was in Turkey. So I recommend you guys go check that one out on the channel with Dee Moonflyer. We talked about energy vampires, living and dead. Super, super fascinating. Right now, I have some music in the background that you can't hear just to put me in the mode to podcast. So it's spooky stuff. I'm going to send you guys the link. I'm going to send you guys the link to this because there is this place. I've known about it for years. It's called the Library of Occult Records, and they operate out of the United Kingdom. And they put some super, super cool music. Hello, John Connor and Jonacide. Welcome. Here's a YouTube video, but you guys can check out the channel. They make their own music, and I think they gather a lot of old stuff and make it anew. Maybe there was a missing film and they are inspired to make something that they think would have went good with that film. Check it out. They are over at the Library of Occult Records. They are also on Bandcamp. Good stuff. I've got some good announcements before we get into these topics, though. We have some wonderful guests coming. So I won't just bore you with me and my talk every single week. Next week, it's a busy week. Tuesday show, we are going to be talking about MK Often. MK Often and whether or not the CIA was hiring witches and Satanists in order to basically understand the paranormal and control the paranormal, infiltrate the paranormal. We're gonna go into that. I'm not. That's what I've been researching on more. And that's Tuesday's show. Thursday's show, which is on the 4th of September, I have Dennis Carroll coming in. He's a self-proclaimed professed vampire hunter, and he's gonna come and talk about vampires. Maybe he even had a real vampire occurrence. I'm not sure. Saturday, I don't have a show on this channel, but I'm going to be a guest on Walter Bosley and Todd Wood's show, California. That is going to be, I believe, 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So I'll share the link. I'll share the stuff on the posts on the YouTube channel. Bigfoot Michigan Rob is coming on the 11th of Thursday. So that's super cool. And I've already lined up a few Halloween guests in October. I have Dan and Ava of Vamp Chat podcast, vampire authors, coming on the 9th of October. Gary Parsons, whose father worked at Hammer Horror, he's going to be coming on the 16th of October. So we've got some great guests lining up, and I'm going to get a few more, especially for spooky season. Vampires at their best. Turkey, maybe a gin. It could have been. John, it could have been a gin. It could have been. Kirby, hello, Kirby, and hello, Mrs. Jonaside. Wonderful to have you here. I'm always glad to see you in the room. It's so interesting, though, the story about the last show that we did with our guest, Dee Dee. She's a retired dancer, and so she was over in Turkey, I think, teaching dance. So she had a very strange experience. We'll just leave it there. And so don't forget to come next Tuesday, that's 7 p.m. Eastern, for the MK. I always want to say MK Ultra. It's MK Ultra, but it's called Project Often, or MK Often. It's basically an umbrella, but it involves witchcraft, Satanists, and I'm going to give my spin on it, because it's not like I think pagan people are all witches, psychopaths, or anything like that. I think they we'll get to it on Tuesday. But before we do, let's go here, and we're going to bring up the whole point of this. If you guys got some questions or topics or any creepy stuff you've heard about vampires, please feel free to let me know. And of course, go to the website, melissadonharris.com. All the links are there. Incognito's in the room. Hello, Incognito. Thank you for the heart. That's my husband. He can send me all the hearts he wants. John Connor, I forget which president, but I remember one had a psychic advisor. Was it Lincoln? I mean, most people in those days deeply believed in that kind of stuff, because, well, in my opinion, it's real. And so I personally think the powers that be and the technocrats have, and with the FBI and all that stuff, have looked into this stuff and looked into psychic stuff, and ESP told us, you're all crazy, it doesn't exist. And now they're using it as a control system and building up their faux pas system of it. All right, before we get into the story, Substack, I put an article out it's not free. I'm having some free articles. I think it's going to be Friday or Saturday on the Amityville Horror, but there's one out on a demonology case. A story I collected personally from someone's experience from the 60s and 70s. So it's up there, melissadonharris.substack.com. Check it out. Now we're going to go to our story. This isn't actually a news story, guys. It's kind of old news. If I can find it. Here we go. Scientists find evidence that Vlad the Impaler shed bloody tears. And I'm going to pop a couple of those documents up for you, because it goes back to that whole notion that essentially vampirism in a lot of instances was highly influenced by diseases that were like seriously in the environment. So we're taking a look at this. Oh, John, I'm glad that you had Long Island as your hometown. He's saying nice on Amityville. Amityville's an interesting case. I think we could pick it apart one time, but here we go. Oh, John aside says Reagan had the astrologer and Incognito said it at the same time. So is Reagan. So that just goes to tell you that these guys know this stuff is real. They know this stuff is real. We're going to get into that on Tuesday because it's real. So here's this letter that they had. They have 3 letters, and I'm actually going to pop them right up on the screen in a second, that they collected from Vlad Dracul, Vlad the Impaler, and they tested these letters. Because one of the accounts from history on Vlad was that Vlad cried tears of blood. And everybody was like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way this man cried tears of blood. So these scientists came across different letters. There's this one on the screen for you. I'm going to pop a couple of them up right now. Here's the one on the screen. This is Vlad Dracul's letter that he wrote. I believe they were written in 14. Let me get these dates right for you. There was a couple of them written in, I think it was 1457. One written in 1457, 2 written in 1475. So I think this was the one written in 1457. And then there was some written in 1475. He died in 1477, by the way. And they were testing to see if they could find any kind of proteins or DNA. And they say they had a process in which they would ensure that this would not be contaminated. Because that was my first question. What if this was contaminated? But they tested all this stuff. And sure enough, they found out that Vlad the Impaler had multiple different diseases, including, my friends, if I can find it again. I seem to be losing my marbles or my papers. My papers, not my marbles. My marbles are still intact. It's including hemolacria and respiratory diseases. Now, hemolacria is a disease that would make your tears have blood in them, dried up blood. Blood would be in your tears. And so it's a really interesting article. I'm going to pop it to you guys in the chat. You guys can check it out if you'd like. And it talks about this tears of Dracula. So we're gonna go past the first part because we don't need to know all about Dracula. Vlad III was the second son of Vlad Dracul. So as we know, Dracul means the dragon, and then Vlad the third became Vlad Dracula, putting the A in that kind of language, Latin languages over in Eastern Europe, makes it, instead of the dragon, it is now the son of the dragon. It's interesting how we get that in the movies too. The son of Dracula, the son of the Wolfman, and yeah, they carried it on. So we don't go Dracula, we have to say son of. They go, instead of Dracul, they say just Dracula. And it was this name that Stoker used for his fictional vampire, of course. Vlad spent several years as a prisoner in the Ottoman Empire, along with his younger brother Radu, and his father and older brother Mircea were murdered in 1447. So eventually Vlad became the voivode of Wallachia himself 3 times. In fact, he ruled 3 different times, which is really shows you how unstable it was in these little kingdoms. He was constantly at war, and it was his brutal treatment of his enemies that led to his infamy. But it was particularly in the German-speaking territories that really didn't like him, and they wrote books detailing and woodcuts and detailing his atrocities, the impalement. Apparently, he dined and dipped his bread in blood. I think a lot of that might have been propaganda, but that's just me. The more accurate eyewitness-based accounts also included details about the churches Vlad's army destroyed during plundering raids in Transylvania. Other stories claimed he burned the lazy and the poor and had women impaled along with their nursing babies. A well-known woodcut shows him dining, like I just said, and he died in 1477, having killed an estimate 80,000 people in his lifetime. 80,000. That's like the town I lived in, just wiping it right out. So they're basing what he looks like on contemporary witnesses and testimonies. So basically, like I told you, people were claiming that he cried tears of blood. So they said, hoping to learn more about Vlad and the general environment in which he lived, the authors of a new study turned to 3 letters written by Vlad. I showed you those letters earlier. He, Sibiu. That's the city where they tested them. 2 were written in 1475, 1 1457, and they were restored in Bucharest in the 20th century. Although the authors state that the process was carried out in such a way to minimize any biological or chemical contamination. All right. So, mass spectrometry-based protemics is a relative newcomer to the field. So that's the process they used. Capable of providing a thorough and very detailed characterization of any protein residues present in a given sample, as well as any accumulated damage. The technique is so sensitive that less sample material is needed compared to other methods. So it's probably good for older relics and items where they may not even have a lot of sample left. Yeah, so here we go. All told, the team identified 100 ancient peptides on these letters, 31 of which were deemed of particular interest. So 31 human peptides. An additional 2,000 peptides from bacteria, viruses, insects, fungi, and green plants. Those 31 human peptides, that's how they know they're his, were related to blood proteins or the respiratory system, as well as ciliopathy or retinal diseases, an inflammatory process, per the authors. One of the letters contained 3 peptides specifically associated with proteins of the eyes, retina, and tears. The author thus concluded that Vlad III may have suffered from a medical condition known as hemolacria, in which a person sheds tears of blood, literally. So this is literally adding to that lore that everybody has as Dracula. And John adds to the conversation, loyalty was very limited amongst the Wallachian nobles. Yeah, they were whacking each other left, right, and center. Definitely. There were some serious issues with the Wallachians. Sad stuff. So the authors say they can not entirely rule out the possibility that the human proteins could have come from other medieval people who may have also handled the documents. However, it is also presumable that the most ancient proteins should be related to the Prince Vlad the Impaler, who wrote and signed these letters. And it's also, it really connects to the fact that people were saying that he cried tears of blood. So it makes sense that this would be compelling, to say the least. And we're going to look at a little video on TikTok. Just 1 second here. Because there we go. Is that the one we got? That's the one we got. All right, let's go into it. From Spider Theory. So go ahead, if you're on TikTok, please subscribe to Spider Theory at Spider Theory.
Appropriate to start talking about some spooky things. And the other day I was reading an article about Vlad the Impaler, because Vlad the Impaler is who a lot of people say vampires are based on. Vlad the Impaler was a prince of Romania it wasn't Romania at the time, but he was very ruthless, and he killed a lot of people, and his main way of killing people was putting them on spikes. And up until recently, they would talk about like superficial things, like just the way he looked or acted, and he was very violent. But scientists took some of his writings and they did some analysis on, it was like sweat, I think, that was on it, and some of the like skin, and they were able to determine that he had a very particular disease where he would cry blood. Creepy. Did you know that people can do that?
Yep, we know they can now, friends. We know they can now. I was unaware of it. This has been out there since 2023, but it just kind of goes into that mythology where we see a whole bunch of diseases. I mean, there's multiple diseases that can be linked up with the vampire, including porphyria, rabies, tuberculosis was linked to it at one time, pale skin, coughing up blood, pellagra, that's a deficiency of niacin, causes sensitivity to the sun, weakness, dementia, narcolepsy, catalepsy, paralysis, appearing dead. People could be in comas and suddenly come alive, anemia, even the plague. People could have interpreted it as some kind of vampiric disease. And so can you imagine if you have this guy who is known for his brutality suddenly crying tears in front of these poor peasants and other people? What is one to think? I can only imagine what is one to think. And that is it. The man likely cried tears of blood, feeding the myth of Dracula further. And Bram Stoker might have read about the tears of blood in some testimony, so that would have added to his vampire things, which would make sense if he read that in some German documents and then said, this is my guy, this is my vampire, he's drinking so much blood, he's killing so many people, he crying the blood out. That's what he's doing. I don't doubt that at all, that was a thing. And it's spooky. So real. So in line with folklore and vampires and disease. And my dogs. All right, so hold on just 1 second. We're going to get another video up because we got one here on a different kind of vampire. And I want to know if anybody has ever heard of this vampire. This is my first time. I'm being introduced to this the same as you. And it's called the Ojai vampire from California. Hold on, guys. Yes, the hounds from hell was barking. I went and gave them heck. I'll put my camera on in just a second here. Well, let's listen to this. It's a couple minutes long.
Had a vampire problem in 1890, specifically in Ojai, California, which apparently has a lot of weird stuff in it, but we're going to talk about the vampire issue it had. So back in the late 1800s, a man from either Spain or Italy, the origins of him are kind of fuzzy, decided to migrate to Ojai, California, and have a farm. But the minute he got there, weird stuff started to happen. People would say that their own cattle would be found mutilated or drained of blood. Other people in towns started going missing. There were strange, really aggressive dogs that just appeared throughout town, especially where this man was living. Eventually, people started to put two and two together. They realized that everything kind of led back to his place, and that this mystery man was the root of all of these problems. I mean, after all, people didn't start going missing until he showed up. So the people of the town decided to take matters into their own hands. They're going hunting for a vampire. The smart thing to do, and what they decided to do, was go during the day. And of course, he wasn't around in his ranch because he was sleeping in a sarcophagus they found above ground on his property. Now, it all sounds a little too easy, right? That's because it was. So when they got close to this sarcophagus, a giant black dog they described to be phantom-like came barreling towards them, and they were chased off. Their next step was to return with better equipment, if you could call it that. They came back with silver crosses and holy water. The cross warded off the dog but didn't stop it. It was finally when somebody threw holy water at the dog that it ran off, and they were able to get into the sarcophagus. Once they got into this sarcophagus, they immediately staked this mystery man and then resealed it with a little extra measure. But then everything seemed to go back to normal. There were no more disappearances, no more mysterious ways their cattle was dying. Everything seemed to die down. Almost. Now, the vampire has never returned, but it's said that the area where this sarcophagus is, which is still apparently somewhere there, that the black dog is still being seen. So my question is, if this black dog is still being seen around where this mystery man is sealed, does that mean he's really dead? Or could he come back? Did you know California had a vampire?
Okay, so make sure you follow Folklore Facts over at TikTok, because that was her amazing research on the Ojai vampire. It's just rife. It's got all the right elements. It's got the protective hounds of hell. As you guys just heard, my hounds of hell were barking in the background. I apologize. They are so sweet. They're really not hellish at all. But it's interesting that these sort of folklores all kind of tie up into this vampire. And people actually in America probably had their old superstitions from wherever homeland they came from, bring it with them. Just like celebrating Halloween comes from Ireland, and a lot of the Irish bring a lot of these traditions with them. People bring their vampire traditions. So this was 1890. This is 135 years ago. Not too long ago, really, in terms of human history, that humans were practicing ways to deal with the undead, the Ojai vampire. Oh, hi, I'm just a vampire. Just cruising along. Don't worry about me and my hound from hell. Hi, how's it going? I just thought it was a really cool story, because before that you have a lot of tales of vampires, even like Massachusetts, all that area like that, like New England. It goes, even farther back. So America has its vampire lore. And I'm sure when our guest next week comes on, Dennis Carroll, we'll hear some Appalachian vampires, Southern, Midwest. I think there is a really good show in talking about the Skinwalker Ranch with the vampire. So we know these myths preclude this modern movie version of vampire. And I just wanted to remind people that America has its vampire traditions as well. It's not just your Middle Eastern vampire. Uh-oh. We're having a bark fest. Bet you someone's at the door. I'm going to go check. Because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. Guys, I'm going to replay this video and mute myself. And you guys can listen to it again. And I'm going to get the little doggos here to calm down.
Vampire problem in 1890, specifically in Ojai, California, which apparently has a lot of weird stuff in it. But we're going to talk about the vampire issue it had. So back in the late 1800s, a man from either Spain or Italy, the origins of him are kind of fuzzy, decided to migrate to Ojai, California and have a farm. But the minute he got there, weird stuff started to happen. People would say that their own cattle would be found mutilated or drained of blood, other people in town started going missing, there were strange, really aggressive dogs that just appeared throughout town, especially where this man was living. Eventually, people started to put two and two together. They realized that everything kind of led back to his place.
Okay, we're gonna pause that there. Genocide saying just let the puppies in. They wanted to go in the other room. They were laying together, chewing on their bones. So I just was like, okay, they're busy over there. And well, you know how it goes with doggos. You know how it goes with doggos. So yeah, Renee is saying the Ojai is beautiful. That's great. Oh dear. This is what happens when you have a second dog. Hold on.
And that this mystery man was the root of all of these problems. I mean, after all, people didn't start going missing until he showed up. So the people of the town decide to take matters into their own hands. They're going hunting for a vampire. The smart thing to do, and what they decided to do, was go during the day. And of course, he wasn't around in his ranch because he was sleeping in a sarcophagus they found above ground on his property. Now, it all sounds a little too easy, right? That's because it was. So when they got close to this sarcophagus, a giant black dog they described to be phantom-like came barreling towards them, and they were chased off. Their next step was to return with better equipment, if you could call it that. They came back with silver crosses and holy water. The cross warded off.
You know, I have to pause this because it's interesting. You got to wonder if there's something in all these devices that really did work in history. Like, we can always scoff at people and think that they're crazy, silver, holy water, but perhaps they had this sort of trial and error where they were, seeing what worked, and these things seem to coincide with a solution where things just sort of went away, or the vampire was stopped being seen, or perhaps it's about belief. If you believe these tools work and you're having like nightmares or anything like that, and suddenly it's not happening anymore because you believe that these tools work. There's that as well. But I love the whole idea of the vampire hunting kit. It's classic. It's but you got to wonder, like, if it was trial and error, or it was suggestion, or it was just a sort of belief system. I don't know. You guys can tell me what you guys think. So we're going to come back here. Doggo's in the room with me. He's still kind of grumbling, and I'm pointing at him going, shush. When I just had the one dog, it wasn't so much of a thing, but now I've got both of them. It's a little bit frustrating. And this guy, he's got poodle. I don't know. He seems to be very willful and pushy. Pushier than my other dog. Sweetie Petey is much easier to do. This guy is really pushy. He's a pushy boy. So we'll have to have him in here from now on. Keep him calm. Keep him calm. Okay, so I totally got sidetracked because of these dogs. And it's kind of annoying. Because this stuff super sidetracks me. when they start doing that. Oh, yeah, I wanted to talk about, speaking of folklore, I wanted to go into this article because we have more evidence in modern times of people looking at things and thinking that they're vampires. Here we go. So, a necropolis is basically a city of the dead. London has like necropolises, like massive Highgate Cemetery and stuff like that. Well, Poland has some of them as well. So this article is talking about, it's from 2023 by Vishwam Sankaran. Scientists also unearthed the body of a medieval woman at the site last year who was also buried with a padlock attached to her foot. They also unearthed 17th century vampire child in Poland. Now, Poland, still to this day, is heavily Catholic, heavily religious in Poland. So there's a lot of spiritual and religious beliefs. They are not quite, I'm not saying they don't have modern technology, they do, but it's a little bit different than the rest of Western Europe. Let's just put it that way. But they're heavily religious. So archaeologists unearthed unusual remains of a child from the 17th century found buried with a padlock attached to the foot. So it's suggesting fears during medieval times that the dead may spring back to life were also alive in the 17th centuries. Researchers explored and excavated graves in an early medieval necropolis graveyard near Dąbrowa Kem. I'm going to butcher this. Dąbrowa Chelmińska in Poland in search of unique burials. Here they made a breakthrough discovery of a young medieval woman's burial last year whose body was double protected from rising from the grave with a triangular padlock on the big toe of her left foot. Remember, we've talked before about how the stake was driven, usually in their stomach, not in their heart, but to pin the vampire down. This is getting literal to the point. They're like padlocking the foot. And then there was also a sickle pointing down with a blade placed around her neck. So they literally sickled her in. Looking for other similar burials, they've uncovered a strange and unprecedented burial of a 17th century child between the ages of 5 and 7. The child's remains were found buried with his face facing down towards the ground in the burial cavity, suggesting the deceased and his activity was feared after death. Such burials with faces pointing downwards, we're back to the European folklore again, were likely done in the region during medieval times to make the deceased bite into the ground and ensure they did not pose a threat to people. That's interesting. Under the bones of the child, archaeologists also discovered a triangular padlock, another one, almost similar to the one accompanying the other medieval woman we talked about, except for this is 17th century. An analysis suggested the child's grave was likely violated and a part of the corpse taken away, but is not known when and why it occurred. So they opened the grave, took part of the body away, made sure that child was facing downward with the padlock on its toe. It's unfortunate because once the body rots, I don't know what a padlock's going to do, but that they're obviously thinking it's still alive, it's going to work. Near the child's grave, researchers also discovered a puzzling cluster of several children's skeletons with a fragment of the jaw in one of them colored green. A similar greenish tint was also seen on the palate of the woman unearthed last year. Researchers suspect there might have been an object made of copper alloy put in the person's mouth. So not only silver, but in Poland, they obviously believe that copper was a weapon against the vampire. During the field research, they also found non-standard burial of a pregnant woman with the remains of her fetus seemingly preserved. Scientists hope to conduct DNA tests of the remains in further lab studies. Given the large number of atypical graves with signs of strange medieval practices at the site, scientists strongly suspect that people of the time were afraid of at least some of the deceased, that they would bring disease back. They wanted them to stay there. They were dead. They need to stay there because they could bring death back to you. So that is not modern times. It's a modern archaeological dig. And my mistake for saying that it was a modern vampire example. It's a modern dig looking at something from the 17th century and something, a body from even before in medieval times, where they are looking at strange habits of basically keeping the vampire down, making sure it doesn't leave that grave, which was the padlock on the toe, a triangular one, the sickle around the neck. You had the copper in the mouth. You also had the turning of the body so the face faces down so it bites into the ground, doesn't get up. This sounds more like a zombie kind of figure that's kind of not so clever, as opposed to a dapper Dracula or vampire, conniving, vampire figure. It sounds more like a zombie, don't you guys think? I would say so. Okay, now we're only going to be on for maybe another 20 minutes or so. It's a shorter show today. because I really was so busy this week doing so much, I don't know, cleaning, organizing, pulling stuff out, getting a yard sale going on. I have tons of stuff that I had to price and clean and organize. And I was just cleaning like crazy and it just took my focus. So this is a little bit of a shorter show today. I apologize, you guys, but we're going to go and refer back to last week's show on the energy vampire. And this is a good one because this is where we can get into all of our experiences with people out there who drain us dry, who use our energy to feed their own. This is a typical person pretty much bragging about being an energy vampire. Now, I'm sure we all know someone that's drained our energy, but we can also come across other ways. Our houses could have energy draining things. It could have mold. It could be haunted. It could have some negative attachment that drains us. People at work, literal spirits. I don't know, some of you might believe hexes, that people will hex you and it will drain your energy. This one is actually saying it's a live person. They're a vampire, but they're an energy vampire. And let's get into this one from the Daily Mail, written by Lillian Gisson, U.S. Deputy Female Editor. Let's check this one out. I'll pop this article into, and if you guys are not on YouTube, remember to subscribe because I'm going to pop this one right into the chat so you guys can read it for yourselves. Boom. Okay, I identify as a vampire. I don't drink blood, but I suck energy from this people. Helen Schweizer from Rhode Island. Okay, people. Anyone from that area? I think someone from John, or didn't you say you were from Rhode Island? Don't go near Helen because she's going to suck you dry, but not your blood, your energy. She's laid bare her unusual lifestyle. She said she takes energy from others with their consent. Okay, let's get into this. Let's see what she's doing. What is this crazy woman doing? A woman who identifies as a vampire has laid bare her unusual lifestyle, revealing that she doesn't drink blood, she sucks energy from people. Self-proclaimed nerd Helen Schweizer, 30, from Providence, explained that she spends years being fascinated by the idea of vampirism. She explained that she would dress up as a fictional vampire character and film content for social media when one day the realization hit her that it wasn't just a costume. She's an energy vampire. Oh my God, there she is. You guys, watch out for her. She's going to suck you dry and use all your energy. Helen explained that most of the ideas about vampires, like only being able to come out at night and garlic being poisonous, were just made up for the movies. Actually, Helen, for an energy vampire, you're not very smart. This is actually folklore. It goes back hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of years, a lot of the stuff that's in the movies. Some stuff is made up. She says, the Count from Sesame Street isn't real. Lestat isn't real. But vampirism as spirituality very much exists. I wouldn't call it spiritual. I would call it parasitical. So she's I don't know. I think this might be all psychosomatic, but hey, you never know. She seems to want a lot of attention for it. I love garlic. I put it on everything. I do sleep at night, but I tend to fall asleep around 3 a.m. and wake up at 10 a.m. So I'm a night owl. I won't burst into flames. So exactly, I want her to explain. She's got the teeth. She kind of does look like a dork. But I want her to explain exactly how she takes the energy with consent. If I feel drained, a friend might have too much energy. She'll ask if I can take some, but I want to know what her process is. How is she taking some energy? That's what I want to know. That's what I want to get at. I don't know what you guys think about this. She says there's ambient energy, which isn't necessarily in someone, but around them. That type of energy usually manifests at concerts and festivals. Oh, so everybody's hyped up. What makes me different from someone who isn't a vampire is the fact that they don't need to take energy. They have it and they can replenish it. We as vampires don't naturally have our own and become trained when we won't feed. Helen, who works in a bookstore, loves to embrace the vampire look and often wears fake fangs, a cape, and sparkling makeup. But unfortunately, that means she sometimes gets stares from strangers. Aww. They usually don't listen. She hasn't explained how she takes it from them. Like, is it just being around them? Because that's not, I don't buy if she just shows up around them, I don't buy the vampirism. Because usually people who are considered energy vampire are usually melodramatic. They create a lot of drama. They want a lot of your attention. They want a lot of your time. They do a lot of chaotic, crazy stuff just to get you, involved with them. So I don't know if I fall for this one. Okay. She's insisted. She's unbothered by the hate from people. I just laugh at how ridiculous people can be. I'd like to say I feel sorry for my haters. My haters aren't very bright, are they? Okay. And instead of getting on the internet to have fun and learn new things, interact with all different kind of people, they log in and say a lot of nasty words. Well, you are putting yourself out there in a very extreme way. She goes on about hatred is a gross disease. She says her mom thinks she's going to hell. She's lost friends because of it. Okay. I think, you know what I think this is? I think she's heard of energy vampires and the vampires of film. And I think, like a lot of identities, this is just the same thing when I was young, that people are trying to be unique and separate from the generation before them. So this is her way of being unique and standing out. It is a form of energy vampirism. She's like, look at me, look at me. She's married. Her husband, Jean-Marc, is her number one supporter. He himself isn't a magic practitioner or a vampire, but he encourages me to embrace myself in magic. Okay. Interesting. A 2015 survey conducted by the Atlanta Vampire Alliance found that 5,000 people in the U.S. practice vampirism. It's its own little cult. Lifestyle vampires admire aesthetic. We've mentioned that before on this show. They may like vampire movies or Anne Rice or fake fangs, Victorian costumes, but at the end of the day, they know they're no different than anyone else because they don't feed. Real vampires, on the other hand, believe that their physical, mental, and emotional health will deteriorate if they don't feed. Like I said, I think a lot of that's psychosomatic. However, like I said to you, we were talking about the tears of Dracula. There are diseases where, I don't know, maybe blood taking would increase your health. It would provide you iron or some kind of mineral that you're deficient in that's causing a disease. A lot of the peasants back in the day and people were nutritionally deficient. They didn't have all of the foods that they needed. Or you're like a guy like Vlad. I mean, can you imagine impaling people and being in battle all the time, exposed to the blood? It's so unsanitary. I mean, you're bound to pop into a disease or two, huh? You let me know what you think. You're bound to. I'm just looking at something. I'm just looking at me live right on X. Yeah. You're bound to come up with something, some bacterial inflammation, viruses, because you're literally dining in front of bleeding bodies that who knows what diseases those people have. It's astounding. It's quite astounding. And so this stuff, energy wise, Oh, Renee put a comment, but she's putting again. I love this. I love this. I'm going to get into this with you, Renee, because I have experience with this as well. Okay, here we go. Renee says, I will try this again. I dated an energy vampire, just being in close contact with him. He worked with elderly, checking in on them in their homes. My God, I did that. Also, he used meth. I noticed that after a few months, I dated an Antifa guy that was supposed to be a recovering addict of sorts, but there was huge issues. And it was so crazy. And I knew that the guy was a liar and crazy. He was at my house. He was living there. He's from England. He came just temporary, and then he was like, wanted to stay longer, and he was going to film stuff. And he ended up being the most abusive psycho person ever. I had to get rid of him. But one day, lights were out. I had candles lit. I was trying to relax, and I was stressing out because I worked in the banking industry after I had my design degree, and it was a horrible job, and they were vampire using me as well. You can get that in companies. They suck you dry. And he was accusing me of losing his vape. He was a smoker who was vaping, and he was accusing me of doing something with it. And I said, I haven't done anything with it. I don't know what you're talking about. And I just put my hands up against my eyes, like pretending to like close my eyes. And he was going on and being rather abusive. And I was like, I kind of went like this, pretend I wasn't looking. And then I kind of peeked out between my fingers. And I literally saw him take the vape out of his pocket and place it over somewhere. And then I was like, oh my God. And then he went, oh, look, there it is over there. Like it just appeared. And he started to say maybe an evil spirit did it and started trying to manipulate me. And I was like, are you freaking crazy? I didn't say a word. Once I saw him, hey, Malia. Welcome in the room. Glad to see you here. But once I saw him do that, I realized right then he lies about everything. There's just absolutely no way someone can say that and then be seriously and not lie about everything. And I realized he was doing that all along. He was doing this gaslighting, hiding things, accusing me, then saying it must be demon. Like, it was really messed up. And I would catch him doing all these lies. I had to be center of attention. It was so crazy. Ended up calling the cops and having him removed from my house. And he had to get someone to fly him back to England. I just dumped all the stuff to him and said, get out. You are crazy. Yo, pyramid. Yeah, I'm just, Renee goes on to say that she was totally drained. I was usually hyperactive and manic. Sadly, he was a sweet guy. My psychotic stepfather actually told my mom he was scared of him. I love that. Well, I'll tell you, this guy that I was with he would pretend he was sweet, but he was actually crazy. He was actually like a Jekyll and Hyde. And I was so exhausted. And I finally, at the end, I just couldn't take it anymore. Like, I was having disease symptoms, physical symptoms. I couldn't breathe. Like, when they say people crawling up on you, like old hag symptom, and you can't breathe. I was literally like that at night. I couldn't breathe. I was like sick. And the minute I kicked him out of the house and got the cops, like, get him out, it went away like that. Psychosomatic, really? Is there a demon attached to him? I think he might have been possessed by something. Yeah, I don't know. Those energy vampires, you can call them a personality disorder, borderline, narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, whatever it is. They're definitely the dark triad. They're definitely the psychic vampire types. And it's highly abusive. Like, you can't function as a normal person. You're on eggshells, and they're literally draining you dry. And he was jealous and envious and argumentative. It was just so toxic and draining. And I was working this job, and the bank job I was working, oh my God, they were crazy. They were trying to get me to, get all these clients and do all this training. And the boss was such a cruel person. There was lots of people who either were alcoholics or drug users, and they would get mad at me because I wouldn't go out and mingle and socialize and drink all night. I'm like, no, I have to go to bed. I have a kid. Like, it was so toxic. That's another story. So yeah, the vampire is so extremely, the energy vampire is such a good metaphor. I would hope that this girl is not doing that. I don't think she is. This girl in the article, I think it's just an identity that she wants to have, to be unique and to feel different. And she just has an interest in vampires. And she's saying it's consensual energy vampirism. And she doesn't explain how she does it, though. Like, I just explained to you that They do it by manipulation, gaslighting, always want to be the center of attention, dramatization. They'll use the courts to always try to get rid of you and then re-engage you and take your energy. So they'll get other people after you so that you're spending all your energy on them, and they drain you. It's an actual, just a physical manipulation process. She doesn't actually explain how she consensually energy vampirizes people. That does she just walk into the room and she absorbs their energy? Does she create drama? Like, I don't know what her process is. She's just saying she does it consensually and at concerts. So I think what it is really where everyone's connected. So when you go to concerts where there's a lot of people and energy, she might be more introverted and you just feel a little more energized at first. So Ojai, where the vampire is we talked about the Ojai vampire from California. It's an area, it's an energy vortex. That's really interesting. Renee. I didn't know that. I would love to go visit the Ojai area. Yeah, we had that video on the Ojai vampire from TikTok, the folklore girl. You can check it out. It is folklore facts on TikTok. It's what's interesting about the energy vampire is I don't think this girl is your true bona fide energy vampire, though. This one in the article, I think she's just an introvert who, when she hangs around people, gets a little charged. And I don't think she's actually creating drama and crazy. I think she likes the aesthetic and the costume. I don't think she's an energy vampire, like we're talking like an evil spirit that literally shows up and drains you dry, or a person in a relationship that has a personality disorder that is always creating chaos or always being dramatic, or even an evil spirit in your house or a spirit in your house that just drains the energy. It has to drain you in order for it to manifest or present itself in your location. I have this book. I don't have it with me. I'm going to have it ready. It is by Robin Skelton and Jean Kozakari, and they were Wiccans, and they go into different houses and they exorcise them or investigate them for the paranormal. This is way back, like 70s and 60s and stuff. They were doing this in Canada, in Victoria, and they relate stories of people being in houses and becoming ill, tumors, all this stuff. And when they moved out, it went away. Like every time they would leave the house, they would have more energy. So one thing we have to remember is to clear our houses, which I think I'm slowly doing, but leave our houses and do a test. Make sure it's not something in your house. I mean, you could have mold, you could have anything like that, but make sure there's not some bad chi lying in your house. Oh, this is cool. Renee says, concerts are wonderful places to charge crystals, jewelry, or divination tools. Oh, interesting. That's the first time I heard that, Renee. Thank you. Malia says, wow, it's crazy. It's cool. It is so interesting, the different things that I'd recommend that book. What's it called? But it's out of print. I have all these rare books. Let me go see if I can find it. See if they actually have one. I also have books of Robin Skelton. He was a poet and he was a teacher at the University of British Columbia in Canada. And I have one where he tells you about spells and the power spells and poetry and language and how writing things down in verse helps you manifest things. He died in 1997. He's been gone for a while. But he was from United Kingdom originally. I'm just trying to see the list of his books. And if I can show it to you, I'll pop it up on the screen. But here it is. He wrote this one in 1990, and I believe, I don't think you can get it. I'm going to pop my screen up there. Super cool. Hi, Pyramid 7. Welcome to the show. Q&A, you got any questions or you got any vampire facts? I'm trying to remember if he actually did a vampire This is the one here. Oh, they have one on eBay. You can get it for $42.46. Let's tap on it so you can see. A witch's book of ghosts and exorcism. It's in rough shape. Mine's in really good shape. That's not. There it is, right there. They don't have it here. A witch's book of ghosts and exorcism. It's perfect because there's vampire-like ghosts that drain you dry. Oh, yeah, this is the cover that I have. The picture, that castle on the picture is a Craig Derrick Castle in Victoria for people who are ever going up to Canada. Really good book. And they talk about how they do their blessings, how they clear things that they use. It's fascinating. And he has a lot of poetry, and they were Wiccan. And I actually going to share with you, I have an article about him on my Substack. You guys can pop over there. That's the wrong one. Did I close my Substack off? Maybe I did. I'll pop it up. But I like this idea that we can find ways to defeat this energy vampire. My guest was talking about it last week. Obsidians, different kind of rocks, different kind of protection. I'm not a jewelry kind of girl, so I think I have to do psychological protections. I'm really bad at the jewelry thing. We don't even have. Everyone's like, you don't have a wedding ring. It's not because I don't love my husband. It's because I can't stand to wear too much jewelry. I don't know, maybe I'm someone's tried to suggest I was autistic once. I don't think that's true though. So we got the newest article is Possession, a girl story of demonic attachment. But I'm going to look at the one on Victoria's Witch and Exorcist, Robin Skelton. Let's pop it up. Witchcraft. Breathing a house. How does a witch investigate a trouble home? According to Kozakari, this is my article, so you're welcome to go subscribe. You can get it for free. I think for a demo article or a free week, I think that's available on Substack. I watched Robin find out his way of working and realized that he breathes a house using his left hand and gently balancing his energy into areas of the room. Following subtle changes in energy, he wanders to disturbed spots and breathes in shallowly and tasting and feeling the atmosphere. This is what I'm talking about, and I'm going to get into this stuff on Tuesday when we talk about the CIA and all the crazy stuff that they do. That they've adapted the MK often. I'm going to talk about how all the paranormal stuff that we see on TV is kind of fake. Go to people like Robin Skelton, who are old timers, who did this stuff before all this, like, oh, you have to have a camera and an EMF meter and a fucking ghost box and all that shit. They literally intuitively breathe in a room. So what I find really fascinating about this guy in the article, the method was used in a case involving a house on St. David Street in Victoria. I've been there. I think I know what house they're talking about. The resident was a single mother attending university, suffered from repeated episodes of extreme illness, always relieved when she left the house. What Skelton and his team discovered, though, through research, ritual, and intuition, was deeply disturbing. The house once belonged to a widower in the early 1900s who met a dance hall girl named May while visiting Barkerville. Barkerville's way up north in British Columbia. This is happening in Victoria, which is on the island. So he meets this May girl up in Barkerville, which was a gold rush town, brings her to Victoria. He brought her back to the St. David Street house, and their marriage deteriorated. What would you expect from a girl from Barkerville, right? Anyways, when the widower passed away, May was left to live alone. Rejected by the local Victorian society, she became recluse, shunned, and forgotten. In the present day, at the time of the book, the single mother in the house began to experience radical personality shifts. Her energy drained. Her behavior became increasingly erratic. Through psychic investigation and spiritual reflection, Skelton and Kozakari uncovered the startling truth. May's spirit had not moved on. Instead, she was clinging to the living and possessing them and draining them. This case wasn't just a haunting, it bordered on possession. So they do a ritual here. I'm not going to get into it, and they restore it. But my article is all about that Robin Skelting, his history, and this one case that they did. And you can check that out on Substack. It's really interesting, and it's in that book that I was talking about that he has. So there's a whole bunch of other articles, and I'll just go through it with you guys. This one goes to YouTube. You can get the radio. The podcast is on there. Podcast will always be free. I'll never charge for it. But the Writer's Bite is all the articles that I put up. Some are free, some are paid. Like I said, you can get a free one if you're a first-time subscriber. But Robin Skelton and breathing in the house, it is just so fascinating. Malia says, "Oh, Melissa, you will like this. I've been tracking a vampiric family line lord. They traced to Stockton, CA, in the middle 1800s. Wow, that's really interesting. That's really fascinating. In the United States, wow, that is great. I have to talk about that." But when you see all this paranormal stuff today and people talking about killing vampires and stuff, they're just standing there with their, their monitor, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna sense the demon." They don't use intuition. Nobody uses that. And I think that's the whole point of this stuff we see today, is so nobody's actually using their intuition and feeling like, is there a vampiric spirit in here that's draining me dry? Like, what's going on? Malia says, all the activity around St. Mary's 1800s church and soup kitchen, surrounded by the Mormon Trow ditch, and guess what street connects them all? Sonora, of course. Oh, the Mormons. I live in Utah. I know. I get it. Okay, so Pyramid 7 says, usually fake on TV. Yep, I hung out with the Ghost Adventures crew on site for one of their episodes. Oh, Pyramid, they did an episode, and I have it. I'll show it to you. I think I did it for free. No, it's the Bundy Ritual House. They did an episode on this Bundy Ritual House, so I went up there and investigated it here in Utah. And what a crock of shit episode. So I wrote it, what really happened with the Bundy Ritual House. And there's no way Ted Bundy was ever there. And I mean, if anything's happening at the Bundy Ritual House, Ghost Adventures, it's because people have put their energy there and created it themselves. Bundy was never there. So it's funny. A lot of stuff is fake on TV. And so, but this book, and I've got it here. Do I even have it in the room? Oh my gosh, here, just one second. I think I have it. I'm going to show it to you. I think it's back there. Hold on. Yes. Okay. Here it is. You might see it in reverse. It's A Witch's Book of Ghosts and Exorcism, Robin Skelton, Jean Kozakari. And it's got a whole bunch of case studies. The House on the Hill, murder, Look Out for the Vampire. So it's got a vampire case. The Chinese Curse, Restless Relics, the Indian Inheritance, Point Ellis Ghost. And it literally gives you the rite of exorcism at the back. Just let me see that rite of exorcism. Maybe I need to use it. Yep. Right here. They have a rite of exorcism. So there you go. Out of print, but never out of style, never out of usefulness. And why I found it compelling, because that's the city I went to university in. It was Victoria, British Columbia. My son went there for a while to university as well. And it is so haunted. it is like, you know where you get those cities, which is like an epicenter or like a vortex, like Renee was talking about. You get those kind of vortex places. Victoria is like that. Renee says, Zach always seems like an ass. Maybe he was an energy vampire. He was always confrontational. Also, he did push people into uncomfortable situations. He's definitely a narcissist, Renee. So I suspect that he's got some energy vampiring going on there. Something's going on with my screen. I'm highlighting everything. And it's not unhighlighting. That is so bizarre. Okay, so I'm going to pop us back into this one. It's so bizarre. You should see my screen. It's doing something weird. So that's the show today, where I wanted to talk about the energy vampire, to cap it off. And of course, I obviously recommend this book as a very good book. But also the idea that, yeah, there are real diseases out there where the vampires are crying real tears. But they're not a vampire. They're actually Dracula. And Dracula probably had some kind of disease that he caught in the medieval times that medieval people did catch. So I'm trying to, there we go. There we go. So guys, if you got some last minute commentary, just pop them up. I'll be sure to get them up. My screen is doing strange stuff. Malia says he asked for proof, then discarded it when he got it. There's consequences for that. Well, from my opinion, Zach didn't want proof. He just wanted to be the center of attention and entertainment. He wanted the fantasy version of paranormal. He wanted to be like a big, famous star. And I mean, he's made a lot of money from it. And I'm sure he's been vindictive and not a very nice person to get there. I'm sure there's people who love him because they have to. But I've watched their shows and a lot of it is crap. And so to finish this off, I'll let you know I had a friend who worked filming documentaries. He went over with, was it HBO? It was one of those networks. I can't remember which one it was, but he was filming a documentary in Spain for them. He inquired about getting funding to do a documentary on the paranormal. And they literally told him, in order to get any funding, you have to make a paranormal, ghostly situation happen. Basically, you have to make a ghost appear. And he was like, what are you talking about? I want to do a documentary on the paranormal. Like, I just want to do facts and talk about the different elements of it. I can't make a ghost appear. And they're like, you have to make a ghost appear. So that tells you what that stuff on TV is all about. It's about fake BS and making something happen. A bunch of grown men sitting in the dark going, hey, I'll challenge you, and then screaming like bitches. It's kind of, it's absurd, it's ridiculous, but it's a template that works. It obviously gets a lot of people's attention, but it's not truly how you would actually feel something out. Because these guys aren't about getting bells and whistles and ghosts to scream. They're feeling it out. And May never thrown a knife or shown up in this story, but she was causing some kind of psychic issue. She was causing some kind of issue for the people that live there. So if you're feeling drained in your house, someone could have left something behind. There could be a spirit there. There could be mold in your house. There could be something physical, but go through your house. It's entertainment, a performance. It's absolutely entertainment and performance, pyramid. But I want to thank you guys for joining the show. And I apologize for the barking dogs. He's calmed down now. Don't forget, next Tuesday, Vampires in the Simulation series, we are going into the CIA and we're going to go look at how they hired witches, Satanists, everything, trying to unravel the paranormal to control it. This stuff was real, and we're going to go into it. We don't have to go into too much. That's Tuesday. Thursday, Vampire Hunter. Dennis Carroll is coming on. He's a researcher, and he's got a lot to tell us. So that is Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to be on Todd Wood. Walter show on Saturday. California. We're going to be there. I believe it starts at like 6 p.m. Mountain, 5 p.m. Pacific. I'll share the link for you. I think we're going to be talking about the show I did on The Exorcist and how the writer William Peter Blatty worked for the CIA and knew mind control, and how some of these films are about mind control and controlling the population. That's how they do it. Pyramid 7 says, I like the Dead Files. That was a good show. Me and my husband like to watch it. That was an interesting show. But I think the best ghost hunting probably happens without cameras and with just people who are intuitive, like you would have been 1,000 years ago. We've got all this technology that interrupts that, unfortunately, guys. And so I'm going to team out. I will see you guys on Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Be here. I got one more comment. I want to see what it is. My system's not showing me the last comment. Okay, cool. Dead Files is a good one. Join me next Tuesday. We're going to talk. We're going to go in conspiracy land. And then we're going to have a vampire hunter on. And we're going to talk about that. Cheers, everybody.
Broadcasting from the crypt. Welcome to Velvet Bite Radio.
You've entered Velvet Bite Radio, my friends, where the undead speak and the forgotten bite back. I'm your host, Melissa Dawn Harris, writer, researcher, and devoted wanderer through vampire folklore, history, and film. Each week, we descend into the crypt of culture to uncover the myths, monsters, and meaning behind the vampire's eternal allure.